The locals exchanged nervous glances, having witnessed 3 professional trainers hospitalized trying to break this living legend of the mountains. Then, through the murmuring crowd, stepped 12-year-old Emily Jensen in faded overalls, carrying nothing but a simple rope and an apple in her pocket. Her eyes met Drifter's wild gaze with a quiet understanding no one else possessed. This moment would transform not just the arrogant auctioneer's bet, but the future of an entire town caught between dying traditions and the unexpected wisdom of a child who knew that some spirits aren't meant to be broken, only understood. Quick pause before we continue. Tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. Sandstone, Colorado had seen better days. Once a thriving ranching community nestled in the shadow of the Rockies, it now bore the weathered look of a town slowly fading into history. Main Street storefronts displayed more for sale signs than merchandise, and the annual livestock auction, once the crowning event of the season, had dwindled to a shadow of its former glory. No one felt this decline more keenly than Mason Blackwood. Standing 6'2" in his custom-made boots, his silver hair slicked back beneath his Stetson, he surveyed the auction grounds with narrowed eyes. His family had run these auctions for 3 generations, but this year's crowd was the smallest he'd ever seen. "Pathetic turnout," he muttered to his son, Tyler, who stood attentively at his side. "Half the ranchers in the county used to fight for spots at this auction." Tyler nodded, adjusting his own hat, a perfect mirror of his father's. "Times are changing, Dad. People are selling out, moving to cities." Mason's jaw tightened. "Not if I have anything to say about it. Today's going to put Sandstone back on the map." Behind them, in a specially reinforced corral, stood the centerpiece of Mason's grand plan, a magnificent black Mustang with a white lightning streak down his chest. The horse paced restlessly, muscles rippling beneath his gleaming coat, eyes wild with barely contained fury. 3 ranch hands stood guard, nervously clutching cattle prods. "You sure about this, Mr. Blackwood?" one of the hands asked, flinching as the Mustang kicked violently at the corral wall. "That beast nearly took Jim's arm off yesterday." Mason waved dismissively. "That's the whole point. Everyone within 100 miles has heard about Drifter, the wild Mustang that can't be broken, the ghost of the mountains. And you're really going to let people try to tame him right here for $5,000? "You bet I am," Mason said. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "And when they fail, which they will, Drifter's reputation grows, and so does mine." Tyler frowned. "And if someone actually manages it?" Mason laughed. "Not a chance. 3 professional trainers have tried. 2 ended up in the hospital. 1 quit the business altogether. This horse is the devil himself." Across town, in a small veterinary clinic that had seen better days, 12-year-old Emily Jensen sat cross-legged on the floor, feeding an injured fox kit with a dropper. The afternoon sunlight streamed through dusty windows, illuminating the gentle precision of her movements. "That's it, little one," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Just a bit more now." Dr. James Wilson watched from his cluttered desk, a smile crinkling his weathered face. "You've got the touch, Emily. That fox wouldn't take food from me for 3 days." Emily shrugged, her auburn hair falling across her freckled face. "He was just scared. Animals understand fear better than people think." Dr. Wilson nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Your mother. had the same gift. At the mention of her mother, Emily's shoulders tensed slightly, but she continued feeding the fox without looking up. Sarah Jensen had been gone for 5 years now, but in Sandstone, people still spoke of her remarkable way with horses, especially the difficult ones other trainers had given up on. The bell above the clinic door jingled and Margaret Jensen entered. Her tall, angular frame was still strong despite her 68 years. Her gray hair was pulled back in a practical bun, and her faded jeans and work shirt bore the honest dirt of morning chores. "There you are," she said, spotting her granddaughter on the floor. "I've been looking all over for you." "Sorry, Grandma," Emily replied, gently placing the fox kit back in its makeshift nest. "Dr. Wilson needed help with the new rescues," the veterinarian added quickly. "Best volunteer I've ever had." Margaret's stern expression softened slightly. "Well, we need to get going. The bank's only open until 4, and we need to talk to Mr. Cooper about the mortgage payment." Emily's face fell. She knew what those conversations were like. Her grandmother's proud, straight back gradually bowed under the weight of financial realities she couldn't control. The Jensen family ranch had been struggling for years, especially since her parents' accident. "Actually," Dr. Wilson interjected, reaching for his wallet, "I was hoping to pay Emily for her help this week. $20 for all those hours. It's not much." "We're not taking charity, James," Margaret cut him off, though her voice was gentle. "You've helped us enough over the years." "It's not charity. It's wages fairly earned," he insisted, but Margaret was already shaking her head. "Let's go, Emily." Outside, as they walked toward the bank, Emily noticed unusual activity around the auction grounds. "What's going on over there? I thought the auction wasn't until tomorrow." Margaret followed her gaze, her expression darkening. "Mason Blackwood's latest spectacle. He's brought in some wild Mustang from the mountains. Been advertising all week about how dangerous it is." "A Mustang from which herd?" "The one that roams near Eagle Canyon. I think they say this one's been evading capture for years. Blackwood's calling him Drifter." Emily stopped walking, her eyes growing wide. "The black one with the white mark like lightning down his chest?" Margaret nodded slowly. "You've seen him before?" "Last summer when I was helping Dr. Wilson check on the Hendersons' cattle up in the North Pasture," Emily said. Her voice grew animated. "He was standing on the ridge above us watching. Dr. Wilson said he was the leader of the herd. He was beautiful, Grandma." "Well, he's in Blackwood's corral now," Margaret said grimly. "And knowing Mason, that horse is just another way to make money off a spectacle." At the bank, their conversation with Dennis Cooper went exactly as expected. The balding manager sat behind his imposing desk, glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed their account with exaggerated concern. "Margaret," he said, his voice a practiced blend of sympathy and firmness. "This is the 3rd month you've been late. The bank has been very patient because of your history in this community, but I'm afraid—" "We'll have it by the end of the month," Margaret interrupted, her back ramrod straight. "The alfalfa crop is coming in strong this year." Cooper sighed, removing his glasses. "It's not just this payment, it's the pattern. Since Robert and Sarah's accident, the ranch has been—" "The ranch is fine," Margaret said sharply. "We've weathered worse than this." Emily sat quietly beside her grandmother, studying the photographs on Cooper's wall. One caught her eye, Cooper standing proudly next to Mason Blackwood at some charity event, both men grinning broadly at the camera. I understand your pride, Margaret, Cooper continued. But at some point you need to be practical. Mason Blackwood has made a very generous offer for your property. The amount would settle your debt and leave you with a comfortable nest egg. Margaret's hand tightened on her purse. My son built that ranch with his own 2 hands. It's where my granddaughter was born. It's not for sale. With all due respect, it might not be your choice much longer. The walk back from the bank was silent, Margaret's face set in grim determination, Emily trailing slightly behind. As they passed the auction grounds, the crowd that had gathered caught Emily's attention. "Can we stop and see?" she asked hesitantly, knowing her grandmother's feelings about Mason Blackwood. Margaret looked like she might refuse, then sighed. "Just for a minute. Then we need to get back to finish the evening chores." The crowd around the auction grounds had grown, drawn by the rumors of Blackwood's challenge. Mason himself stood in the center of the corral now, microphone in hand, playing to the audience with the practiced ease of a showman. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice boomed across the grounds, "what you're about to witness is truly extraordinary. Behind me stands Drifter, the untamable spirit of the mountains. For years, this magnificent beast has eluded the best wranglers in Colorado. 3 professional trainers have tried to break him. All have failed." The crowd murmured appreciatively, straining to see the Mustang that was now being led into the main corral by 4 nervous handlers. Even from a distance, Emily could feel the horse's distress. "Today," Mason continued, "I'm offering a challenge. 5 minutes with this horse. If anyone here can get Drifter to willingly accept a saddle and bridle within that time, the horse is yours free of charge." He paused for dramatic effect. "But," he added with a cold smile, "if you fail, you pay me $5,000 for wasting my time." The crowd buzzed with excitement and disbelief. $5,000 was more than many of them made in months. "That's robbery," Margaret muttered. "He knows nobody can tame a wild Mustang in 5 minutes. He's just showing off." Emily wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on Drifter, who had begun pacing the perimeter of the corral, looking for escape. Something about his movements, the particular way he held his head, sparked a memory. "Any takers?" Mason challenged, scanning the crowd. "Surely there's someone here brave enough or skilled enough to try." A tall man in worn jeans and a rodeo jacket stepped forward. "I'll take that bet, Blackwood." Emily recognized him as Ben Carter, a former rodeo champion who now trained horses for wealthy clients. He had a reputation for getting results by any means necessary. "Ah, Ben Carter," Mason's grin widened. "A professional? This should be interesting. 5 minutes on the clock, $5,000 on the line. Let's see what you've got." The crowd pressed forward as Ben entered the corral, a rope and saddle in hand. His approach was confident, practiced, but Emily could see the tension in his shoulders. Drifter sensed it, too. The Mustang's ears flattened against his head, his powerful body coiling like a spring. Ben moved in quickly, trying to corner the horse against the corral wall. For a moment, it seemed like his strategy might work. Then, with lightning speed, Drifter reared up, hooves slashing through the air inches from Ben's face. The crowd gasped. Ben stumbled backward, dropping his rope. Drifter charged, forcing Ben to dive under the lowest corral rail to escape. The timer hadn't even reached 2 minutes. "Better luck next time, Ben," Mason called out, not bothering to hide his amusement. "That'll be $5,000. Ben dusted himself off, face red with embarrassment. "That horse is impossible. He's not just wild. There's something wrong with him. Mason shrugged. A bet's a bet. 2 more men tried their luck. A ranch hand from a neighboring property lasted 3 minutes before Drifter cornered him against the rails. A self-proclaimed horse whisperer from Denver didn't even make it into the corral. Drifter's violent reaction to his approach sent him scrambling back to safety. Emily watched it all with growing distress. The men were approaching Drifter all wrong. With fear, masked as dominance, with a need to conquer rather than connect. And the horse was responding the only way he knew how, with his own fear transformed into aggression. "We should go," Margaret said, tugging gently at Emily's arm. "This isn't right. That horse is terrified." But Emily couldn't move. Her eyes were locked with Drifter's now. In the midst of his panic, the horse had suddenly gone still, his gaze finding hers across the dusty arena. For a heartbeat, everything else seemed to fade away. "No more takers," Mason called out, surveying the crowd. No one else brave enough to try their luck with the mighty Drifter. Before she fully realized what she was doing, Emily stepped forward. "I'll try," she said, her voice clear despite its softness. The crowd parted, heads turning to stare at the small girl in faded overalls. A ripple of nervous laughter spread through the onlookers. Mason's eyebrows shot up, then his face split into a mocking grin. "Well, well," he said. "Looks like we have a volunteer." He turned, spotting Margaret's horrified expression. "Margaret Jensen's granddaughter, if I'm not mistaken. Sarah's girl." At the mention of her mother, Emily lifted her chin slightly. "Yes, sir." "Emily, no." Margaret pushed forward, grabbing her granddaughter's shoulder. "This is ridiculous. That horse is dangerous." Mason's grin widened. "Listen to your grandmother, little girl. This isn't some gentle riding pony. This beast has nearly killed men 3 times your size." "I just want to try," Emily said quietly. "I won't get hurt." "Emily Jensen," Margaret's voice was sharp with fear. "We are leaving now." Mason stepped closer, his tall frame looming over them both. Now, Margaret. Let the girl try, if she wants. Who knows? Maybe she inherited her mother's famous touch." The casual cruelty in his voice made Margaret stiffen. "You're not risking my granddaughter for your entertainment, Mason." "It's not entertainment. It's business," his voice hardened. "And speaking of business, I understand you had another meeting with Dennis Cooper today. 3rd late payment this year, was it?" Margaret's face paled. Emily looked between them, suddenly understanding the deeper currents beneath this exchange. "What if we change the terms?" Emily suggested, her young voice surprisingly steady. "If I can't tame Drifter, you don't get any money because we don't have it. But if I can, we get the horse, and you forgive 1 month of Grandma's mortgage payment." A murmur ran through the crowd. Mason's eyes narrowed, calculating. "Emily," Margaret protested. "This is an interesting proposition," Mason cut in, ignoring Margaret. "Considering the bank that holds your mortgage is a major sponsor of my auctions." He pretended to consider, though his eyes gleamed with anticipation. "All right, deal. You get 5 minutes just like everyone else. You fail, no penalty since you're just a child. You succeed, which you won't, you get the horse and 1 month's relief on your mortgage." He turned to the crowd, playing Arby to them. "What do you say, folks? Should we let young Miss Jensen try her luck with the devil horse?" The response was immediate and enthusiastic. The prospect of seeing the arrogant Mason Blackwood potentially lose his bet to a child was too delicious to pass up. "Mason, please," Margaret pleaded, her voice low. She's just a little girl." "A little girl who just made a bet," he replied coldly. "Unless she's backing out." Emily met his gaze. "I'm not backing out." She turned to her grandmother, gently removing Margaret's hand from her shoulder. "It'll be okay, Grandma. I promise." Then, before anyone could stop her, Emily Jensen walked toward the corral gate, where Drifter paced in agitated circles, the late afternoon sun glinting off his midnight coat, his destiny about to collide with hers in ways that would change everything in Sandstone. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The crowd fell silent as Emily approached the corral gate. Even Mason Blackwood's confident smirk faltered slightly as he watched the small figure in faded overalls. Dr. Wilson pushed through the crowd to stand beside Margaret, his weathered face etched with concern. "She shouldn't be doing this, Margaret," he whispered. "You think I don't know that?" Margaret's voice trembled. "But you know, Emily, when she gets that look in her eye, just like her mother—" Inside the corral, Drifter pawed at the ground, nostrils flared, eyes rolling. The ranch hands exchanged nervous glances, cattle prods at the ready. Mason gestured impatiently for them to open the gate. 5 minutes, he reminded Emily, his voice carrying an edge of anticipation. "The clock starts when you step inside." Emily nodded, taking a deep breath. As the gate swung open, she removed her cap, letting her auburn hair fall loose around her shoulders. Then, to everyone's surprise, she pulled a worn harmonica from her pocket. "What's she doing?" someone in the crowd whispered. "Making a fool of herself," Tyler Blackwood replied with a snicker. Emily stepped into the corral slowly, deliberately. The gate clanged shut behind her. Mason started the timer with a theatrical flourish, and the crowd collectively held its breath. For several seconds, Emily just stood there, making no move toward Drifter. The Mustang backed away, maintaining the maximum distance between them. His ears flicked nervously, but he didn't. Charge or rear? Not yet. Then Emily began to play. The simple melody that emerged from the harmonica was soft, almost hesitant. A few notes, a pause, then a few more. The crowd exchanged confused looks. This wasn't how you approached a wild horse. This wasn't how you tamed anything. But Margaret recognized the tune immediately. It was an old lullaby Sarah used to play for Emily when she was small, the same melody she'd used to calm nervous horses. Drifter's ears swiveled forward, his frantic pacing slowing. Emily continued playing, her small fingers moving deftly across the harmonica. After a minute of the gentle music, she lowered the instrument and took a single step forward. Drifter snorted, pawing the ground again, but he didn't retreat. "Look at that," Dr. Wilson murmured. "He's curious." Mason checked his watch ostentatiously. 3 minutes left. She hasn't even touched him. Emily took another careful step, then another. She had pocketed the harmonica and now held out an empty hand, palm up. Her lips were moving, though no one could hear what she was saying. "She's talking to him," Margaret said softly, "just like Sarah used to." 2 minutes remained on the clock. Emily was now halfway across the corral, still moving with that same deliberate slowness. Drifter stood his ground, watching her intently, his powerful body tense, but no longer trembling with fear. "She's going to get herself killed," Tyler muttered to his father. Mason didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the scene unfolding before him, his confident smirk gradually giving way to confusion. When Emily was about 10 feet from Drifter, she stopped and slowly reached into her pocket. The crowd gasped, fearing a sudden movement might trigger the Mustang's flight response. But Emily withdrew only an apple, which she placed on the ground before taking 2 steps backward. "Smart!" Dr. Wilson nodded approvingly. "She's giving him the choice." Drifter's nostrils flared, catching the scent. His ears flicked forward in interest, though he made no immediate move toward the offering. 1 minute remained. Mason was no longer checking his watch. The crowd had gone completely silent, collectively holding its breath. Emily began humming the lullaby now, the same melody she'd played on the harmonica. Her voice was soft, but in the silence of the auction grounds, it carried with surprising clarity. She knelt in the dirt, making herself smaller, less threatening. 30 seconds. Drifter took one hesitant step forward, then another. His eyes never left Emily, but the wild panic had been replaced by something else, a guarded curiosity. "I'll be damned," someone whispered from the crowd. 20 seconds. Drifter was now just a few feet from the apple. From Emily. The Mustang lowered his head cautiously, nostrils working as he caught her scent. Emily remained perfectly still, humming quietly, her eyes lowered submissively. 10 seconds. With a final tentative step, Drifter reached the apple. He sniffed it carefully, then took it delicately between his teeth. As he chewed, Emily slowly, so slowly, raised her hand. 5 seconds. The Mustang tensed, but didn't pull away. Emily's small hand hovered in the air between them, an invitation rather than a demand. 3 seconds. Drifter swallowed the apple. His dark eyes studied Emily's outstretched hand. 2 seconds. The Mustang took a step closer. 1 second. Drifter's velvety muzzle touched Emily's palm. "Time!" Mason called out, his voice strangely flat. But no one was listening to him anymore. The crowd watched, mesmerized, as the wild Mustang that had terrorized 3 professional trainers gently nuzzled the hand of a 12-year-old girl in faded overalls. "She did it," Margaret whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "My God, she actually did it," Dr. Wilson squeezed her shoulder. "Sarah would be so proud." Emily slowly rose to her feet, her hand still resting on Drifter's muzzle. With her other hand, she reached up and gently stroked his neck. The Mustang's eyes half closed, his breathing steady and calm. The silence broke as the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Emily turned, startled by the sudden noise, and Drifter tensed, but he didn't bolt. Instead, he stayed beside her, as if drawing courage from her presence. Mason Blackwood stood frozen, the stopwatch still in his hand, his face drained of color, his confident smirk long gone. Tyler approached him, speaking urgently into his ear, but Mason shook him off. "The bet!" Margaret called out, pushing forward. "She won the bet, Mason." Blackwood's jaw tightened. "She didn't saddle him. The terms were clear. Saddle and bridle within 5 minutes." A murmur of disapproval rippled through the crowd. Dr. Wilson stepped forward, his normally gentle demeanor hardened with anger. "That's not what you said, Blackwood. You said tame him, and by God, that's exactly what she did." Voices rose in agreement. Ben Carter, the rodeo champion who had failed so spectacularly, nodded vigorously. "The doc's right. You said tame him, not saddle him." Mason looked around, feeling the crowd turning against him. His eyes narrowed as they landed on Emily, still standing calmly beside Drifter in the center of the corral. "Fine," he snapped. "She got lucky. The horse gets 1 apple and suddenly he's a pet. That doesn't mean she won." Sheriff Hank Miller's authoritative voice cut through the argument. The tall lawman had been watching from the edge of the crowd. "Pay up, Mason! The girl won fair and square." Trapped by his own public challenge and the witness of the entire town, Mason forced a tight smile. "Of course, a bet's a bet. The horse is hers." He turned to Margaret. "And I'll speak to Dennis about that mortgage payment." Tyler grabbed his father's arm. "Dad, you can't be serious. That horse is worth—" "I know exactly what he's worth," Mason cut him off sharply. He looked back at Emily, his expression unreadable. "Congratulations, Miss Jensen. It seems you inherited more than just your mother's looks." Inside the corral, Emily was oblivious to the debate. Her world had narrowed to the magnificent creature beside her, his warm breath on her hand, the gentle nudge of his muzzle against her shoulder. She stroked his sleek neck, feeling the powerful muscles beneath her fingers. "Hello, Drifter," she whispered. "I'm Emily." The Mustang nickered softly as if in response. The ranch hands cautiously approached with a lead rope, but Emily waved them away. Instead, she turned to face Drifter directly, looking into his dark eyes. "We're going home now," she told him, her voice gentle but firm. "I need you to follow me. Can you do that?" As if understanding her words, Drifter lowered his head slightly. Emily turned and walked slowly toward the gate. After a moment's hesitation, the Mustang followed, matching his pace to hers. The crowd parted in awe as Emily led Drifter out of the corral without a rope, without a bridle, with nothing but the invisible bond that had formed between them in those 5 miraculous minutes. Margaret stood waiting, tears streaming unashamedly down her weathered cheeks. Dr. Wilson stood beside her, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "Grandma," Emily said, her face glowing with quiet triumph. "This is Drifter. He's coming home with us." Margaret nodded, unable to speak. She reached out tentatively toward the Mustang, who regarded her with cautious interest but didn't shy away. "You're your mother's daughter." "All right," she finally managed, her voice thick with emotion. Mason Blackwood watched the scene from a distance, his face a mask of controlled fury. Behind him, Tyler seethed visibly. "This isn't over," Tyler muttered. "That horse was supposed to be the centerpiece of tomorrow's auction. You promised buyers would be bidding thousands." "Shut up," Mason hissed. "Not here." Edith Montgomery, Sandstone's most dedicated gossip, sidled up to them, her thin lips curved in a satisfied smile. "Well, Mason," she said, "it seems your big event didn't quite go as planned." Mason forced a chuckle. "On the contrary, Edith, people will be talking about this for years. You can't buy that kind of publicity." "Indeed," Edith agreed, her eyes sharp with malice. "The great Mason Blackwood, outsmarted by a little girl. They'll certainly be talking about that." As she walked away, Mason's facade cracked slightly, a vein pulsing at his temple. He turned to watch Emily Jensen leading Drifter down Main Street, followed by a procession of townsfolk, all eager to witness this unprecedented miracle. "I want everything on the Jensens," he said quietly to Tyler. "The ranch, the financials, everything. That girl just cost us a lot more than a horse." Tyler nodded, already pulling out his phone. "What about tomorrow's auction?" Mason straightened his hat, composure returning. "The show goes on. But now we have a new angle. The miraculous horse girl of Sandstone. By tomorrow morning, I want every newspaper and local TV station covering this story. And the horse—" Mason's eyes narrowed. One way or another, that horse will be back in my possession before the month is out. Count on it. The journey back to the Jensen ranch was slow. Emily walked the entire way, Drifter following her like a shadow. Margaret and Dr. Wilson drove behind them in the doctor's old pickup truck, maintaining a respectful distance. "I've never seen anything like it," Dr. Wilson marveled, watching through the windshield as Emily occasionally stopped to let Drifter sniff at interesting patches of grass or investigate a roadside puddle. "It's like they've known each other forever." Margaret nodded, her eyes never leaving her granddaughter. "Sarah would say they have. She always believed animals and people could recognize kindred spirits." The Jensen Ranch sat on 20 acres of land that rolled gently toward the mountains. The white farmhouse needed paint, and the barn roof had seen better days. But there was a proud dignity to the place, the home of a family who worked hard and loved the land. As they approached the property, Emily felt Drifter tense beside her. She stopped, giving him time to survey his new surroundings. The Mustang's nostrils flared, taking in the scents of hay, other horses, and the coming evening. "It's okay," she assured him quietly. "This is home now. You're safe here." In the small paddock beside the barn, 2 older horses watched the newcomer with interest. Clover, an aging mare who had been Sarah's favorite, whinnied a greeting. Drifter responded with a cautious, nickering sound. "That's Clover and Max," Emily explained, as if Drifter could understand every word. "They're very nice. You'll like them." Dr. Wilson parked the truck and hurried to open the paddock gate. Emily led Drifter inside, then stepped back, letting him explore his new territory. The Mustang moved carefully around the perimeter, stopping occasionally to exchange sniffs with the other horses over the fence. "He's going to be okay," Dr. Wilson said, coming to stand beside Emily. "You did something incredible today." Emily shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. "I just talked to him like Mom used to." Dr. Wilson smiled gently. "It was a bit more than that, Emily. You understood something about him that nobody else did." "He was scared," Emily said simply. "Not mean, just really, really scared." Margaret joined them, carrying a bucket of fresh water, which she placed inside the paddock. "He's not the only one who was scared today," she said, giving Emily a pointed look. "What you did was dangerous, young lady." "I know, Grandma. I'm sorry if I scared you, but I knew I could do it." Margaret sighed, her stern expression softening. "Your mother used to say the same thing." She reached out to smooth Emily's wind-blown hair. "You took 10 years off my life today, but I'm proud of you." Emily beamed, then turned back to watch Drifter, who had finally relaxed enough to lower his head and drink from the water bucket. "He'll need a proper vet check tomorrow," Dr. Wilson said. "Make sure he's healthy. Get him vaccinated. I can come by in the morning." "We'd appreciate that, James," Margaret replied. "And thank you for being there today." As the sky darkened toward evening, Emily insisted on staying with Drifter. Margaret brought out a sandwich and a thermos of hot chocolate, setting them on the fence post. 1 hour, she told her granddaughter firmly. "Then you come inside. The horse will still be here in the morning." Emily nodded, though her attention remained fixed on Drifter, who had settled in a corner of the paddock, watching her wearily but without fear. When Margaret and Dr. Wilson had gone inside, Emily sat cross-legged in the dirt, just outside Drifter's comfort zone. She pulled out her harmonica and began to play again, the same gentle lullaby, its notes floating on the evening air. Drifter's ears swiveled toward the sound. After a few minutes, he cautiously approached, eventually settling on the ground, a few feet away from Emily, his large body relaxed, his breathing steady. "I won't let anything bad happen to you," Emily promised between melodies. "Not ever." As if understanding, Drifter closed his eyes. The great wild Mustang that had defied capture for years, finally at peace in the presence of a child who had seen past his fear to the gentle spirit beneath. Neither of them noticed the glare of headlights that briefly illuminated the entrance to the ranch road before switching off, or the dark figure that watched from the shadows before silently retreating into the night. Dawn broke over the Jensen ranch, painting the weathered buildings with golden light. Emily was already awake and dressed, hurrying through her morning chores with unusual efficiency. Margaret watched from the kitchen window, a cup of coffee, warming her hands as her granddaughter lugged water buckets to the paddock where Drifter waited. "She's been up since 5. Margaret said as Dr. Wilson let himself in through the back door, medical bag in hand. "Not surprising," he replied, accepting the cup of coffee she offered. "That horse is a once-in-a-lifetime find." Margaret's expression grew serious. "James, what Mason did yesterday, it wasn't just about the auction, was it?" Dr. Wilson sighed, setting down his cup. "Mason Blackwood has wanted your land for years, Margaret. You know that. But why? Our little ranch isn't worth much compared to his holdings. It's not about the value. It's about the water rights. Your property controls access to Eagle Creek. And with the drought conditions worsening..." He trailed off, but the implication was clear. Margaret moved to the window again, watching Emily talking animatedly to Drifter across the paddock fence. The Mustang's ears were pricked forward, attentive. "Yesterday was just the beginning," she said quietly. "Mason isn't going to let this go." Outside, Emily had produced an apple from her pocket and was holding it out to Drifter. The Mustang approached cautiously, but with far less hesitation than the previous day. He took the fruit gently from her palm, his dark eyes watching her with what almost looked like trust. "Good morning to you, too," Emily laughed as Drifter nudged her shoulder, searching for more treats. "That's all for now. Dr. Wilson's going to check you over today. Make sure you're healthy." At the mention of a stranger, Drifter's ears flattened slightly. Emily stroked his neck reassuringly. "It's okay. He's nice. He helped me save a fox last week." The sound of an approaching vehicle drew her attention. A battered news van with the logo of the local television station crawled up the driveway, followed by 2 cars. Emily frowned. They weren't expecting visitors. Inside the house, Margaret had also noticed the procession. "What on earth?" Dr. Wilson peered out the window, his expression darkening. "Looks like the press. And is that Dennis Cooper with them?" Margaret's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "Mason's doing, no doubt." A reporter was already out of the van, cameraman in tow, heading straight for Emily and Drifter. The banker, Dennis Cooper, emerged from the first car, straightening his tie nervously. From the second vehicle stepped Calvin Reed, Sandstone's wealthiest rancher and Mason Blackwood's longtime business rival. Drifter backed away from the fence, alarmed by the strangers. Emily placed herself between the Mustang and the approaching group, her small frame tense with protective instinct. "Easy now," she murmured to the horse. "Stay with me." The reporter reached them first, microphone extended enthusiastically. "Emily Jensen, Kathy Simmons, Channel 8 News. We're here about the miracle at yesterday's auction. Can you tell our viewers how you managed to tame the untamable Mustang? Before Emily could respond, Margaret appeared at her side, Dr. Wilson close behind. "My granddaughter isn't giving interviews," Margaret said firmly, "especially not ones orchestrated by Mason Blackwood." The reporter's professional smile dimmed slightly. "Mrs. Jensen, this is a remarkable human interest story. Your granddaughter is a local hero." "My granddaughter is 12 years old and has school in an hour." Dennis Cooper stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Actually, Margaret, I'm not here with the news crew. I came to discuss yesterday's agreement about the mortgage payment." Calvin Reed approached as well, his weathered face impassive beneath his expensive Stetson. Unlike Cooper's nervous energy, Reed moved with the confident ease of a man accustomed to power. "And I," he announced, "am here to make an offer on that extraordinary animal." Dr. Wilson moved protectively closer to Emily and Drifter. "The horse isn't for sale, Calvin. He was won fair and square." Reed's eyebrows raised slightly. "Everything has a price, Doctor. I'm prepared to offer $10,000 cash." A gasp came from the reporter, who was avidly recording the entire exchange. Margaret's expression remained stony. "Mr. Reed, we appreciate your interest, but as Dr. Wilson said, Drifter isn't for sale at any price." Cooper fidgeted with his tie again. "Margaret, be reasonable. $10,000 would cover nearly a year of your mortgage payments." "The matter isn't open for discussion." Margaret